Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. I knew exactly when it started. When Aunt Pam clinked her glass and said, "Let's raise a toast to Riley." Finally, someone in the family with a real job. My name's Jenna. I'm 32. I live in Columbus, Ohio. We were at my dad's retirement party, held at some country club outside Dayton. A rented tent, white tablecloths, too much roast beef, and people pretending they hadn't already judged each other before dessert hit the table. Dad had just wrapped up 35 years as a regional VP for a farm equipment company. Big send-off, 5-figure budget, lots of cowboy boots, and handshake laughs. But the spotlight didn't stay on him for long. Riley, my 24-year-old cousin, had just landed a job at a swanky architecture firm in Chicago. Everyone was fawning. "She's so driven. That girl has her life together." Even my mom kept repeating how polished she looked. I was sitting at the end of the table, next to the ice sculpture. No one asked me what I was working on. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. "Jenna," Aunt Pam turned toward me with that fixed smile she always uses when she's about to talk down. "Are you still dabbling in that freelance thing?" I took a sip of my wine. "Yeah, still working in media strategy." "Interesting," she said. "But when do you think you'll settle down and contribute? Get something stable going." There it was, the word they always used, contribute, as if my entire life was one long unpaid internship. Dad chuckled from across the table. "Your cousin just got a signing bonus. You hearing that, Jenna? That's what security looks like." I nodded, smiled. "That's great for her." Riley leaned over, trying to be sweet. "You're still doing video stuff, right? Like social media?" "Among other things," I said. I wasn't going to give them details they wouldn't understand anyway. Someone else chimed in. I think it was Uncle Mitch. "You know what they say. If you can't explain your job in one sentence, it's probably not a real one." Everyone laughed like it was harmless, but I heard the message clear. Riley's the adult now. I'm just playing around. I felt my jaw lock for a second. Then I reached for the bread basket and passed it to Aunt Pam like none of it touched me. She took a roll, looked at me with a little shrug and said, "Just don't wait too long to figure it out, honey." I forced a smile. Noted. Then I excused myself and headed to the restroom, phone in hand, checking analytics like my next decision didn't control more capital than this entire room combined. I came back from the restroom and sat down just as the second round of drinks hit the table. My glass of wine had been refilled without me noticing. The servers were dropping steaks and mashed potatoes in front of everyone like we were at a wedding reception, not a retirement party. Uncle Mitch leaned back in his chair, fork still in hand. "So, Jenna," he said, loud enough to quiet the chatter, "what's the 10-year plan?" I stabbed at a piece of broccoli. "Still building. Long-term scale is the focus." He blinked. Meaning I'm focused on strategic growth, revenue compounding, diversification. He laughed like I was trying to impress him with big words. I meant, what does your life look like in 10 years? Married? House? Real job? That sort of thing. "Same answer," I said. "Still building." Riley, sitting across from me, looked up with that innocent, helpful smile. "Do you have, regular clients? Or is it just project by project?" I tilted my head slightly. "It depends. We work on acquisition cycles, so it's a mix. Long-term partners, some short-term engagements." She nodded like she understood, but I could see it didn't land. At all. Her brain was still in job titles and LinkedIn summaries, not systems. Across the table, Aunt Pam pushed her napkin into her lap like she was gearing up for a sermon. I think the problem is people chase these niche ideas, thinking they're building something. But real wealth doesn't come from trends or tech startups or whatever it is people do online. I glanced down, cut into my steak. "It comes from tangible businesses," she went on. "Land, farming, manufacturing, property, things that last, not apps and influencers." Someone snorted. I didn't look up to see who. Maybe Uncle Mitch, or that cousin I barely talked to from Cincinnati. One of them muttered, "Online media, that's code for unemployed." Another added, "If I had $1 for every kid trying to be a YouTuber." I kept chewing, staring at the center of my plate like it was a conversation shield. Aunt Pam said suddenly, "Riley's firm might be hiring support staff, even a creative role. Could be great for experience, give you a taste of structure." Riley looked surprised. "Oh, yeah, we might be. I don't know exactly, but I could ask." All eyes turned back to me like I was supposed to be grateful, like I'd just been offered a ladder out of the mud. I smiled. Good idea. I didn't say more than that. I knew better. You give them a paragraph, they hear a confession. Silence sat over the table for a beat. Then Pam added, sometimes it's better to learn the ropes inside a company before going solo. You never know what skills you're missing until you're part of a system that works. I nodded slowly. Totally get it. That seemed to satisfy her. The tension thinned out just enough for people to go back to their food. Someone started a new topic. Dad's old fishing boat, I think. But the space around me still felt cold, like I'd walked into a room where someone had just been bad-mouthing me and no one knew I'd heard it. I took another sip of wine and locked my jaw. Not because I was angry, but because the ache was familiar. I'd felt it too many times. This room didn't care what I'd built. They weren't curious. They didn't ask questions to understand, only to confirm I didn't measure up. I let the conversation float past me while I ran numbers in my head. Ad CPM trends, licensing flows, creator equity splits. All of it more real to me than their tax prep talk and property management tips. Riley leaned in again toward the end of the meal. Hey, seriously though, if you want me to ask around at the firm, I totally will. I gave her the same calm smile I'd used 100 times that night. Appreciate it. And then I stood up to help collect plates, just so I didn't have to answer anything else. Back in my apartment the next morning, I made coffee and stood at the window while it brewed, staring out at the street like it had answers. My stomach still felt tight from last night's dinner, not from the food, though that steak sat like cement, but from the way they all looked at me like I was drifting, like I'd missed some invisible deadline for becoming real. The apartment was quiet, just the low hum of my fridge and the occasional car sliding down the wet street outside. No voice chiming in with advice, no passive-aggressive questions about what I was doing with my life. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. The dashboard loaded in seconds. 8 years of silence brought me here. It started with freelance video editing, small-time YouTubers, local businesses. Then I figured out how to grow podcasts, tweaking intros, optimizing upload schedules, testing titles. It was mostly instinct at first, trial and error. The hustle nobody cared about because it wasn't sexy and it didn't come with a paycheck stub. After a while, I realized growth had patterns. Certain creators hit virality not by luck, but because the signals were there early. So I built a model, then another, then another. I spent nights watching the numbers, tracking drop-off rates, retention spikes, monetization cliffs. By the time I turned 28, I wasn't just helping content grow. I was investing in it. We'd identify creators with potential, front the capital for production teams and scaling infrastructure, then lock down licensing and distribution. By 29, I had a small portfolio. By 30, I had a partner. By 31, I had a full team. Now we were a private digital asset firm with $620 million under management. Media acquisitions, creator networks, global licensing, IP pipelines. Content wasn't just content, it was inventory. We didn't sell ads, we owned attention. But no one in my family ever asked, not once. They stopped asking when I said freelance. That was enough for them to label it a phase. They never pressed further. Never thought to wonder how I paid cash for a 3-bedroom condo downtown, or why I always flew in late and left early. It was easier to assume I was lost than admit I might be building something they didn't understand. I pulled up a few of our dashboards, engagement charts, ROI splits, new creator pitches. We'd just closed on 2 podcast networks, 1 short-form IP catalog, and a digital rights agreement with a Southeast Asian animation studio. Then I opened Slack. Chris, my lead analyst, had already messaged twice. Chris, Rural Service Media Holdings, full report ready. Might want to read this one closely. Chris, we're sitting on infrastructure tied to legacy players. Might be time to reposition. I cracked my knuckles and leaned back in the chair. This was where I lived. Not at banquet tables or fake job offers. Here, in numbers. In moves that made markets shift and people scramble to catch up. The ridiculous part was, I never hit it. I just didn't advertise it. If someone wanted to know, they could have asked. They didn't. And now they wouldn't know how close they were to the edge until the floor dropped out from under them. I typed back to Chris. Me, I'll read it now. Let's prep options for Monday. I want full control on this rotation. Because when you're used to being underestimated, you learn how to move in silence. You stop trying to explain things to people who've already decided you're irrelevant. You let them laugh about influencers and online trends while you scale behind the scenes. That's what they never understood. I wasn't playing a game, I was the game. And they were about to feel it. Chris called exactly 8 minutes after I messaged him back. Hey, just sent over the full asset report, he said. We need to talk about rural service media. The model's collapsing. I clicked open the file as he talked. Pages of charts, cash burn rates, debt structures, demo breakdowns. All of it flashing in red. Broadcasts bleeding, he continued. Average viewer age is pushing 65. Ad spends down 30% year over year. Cable infrastructure costs are spiking, especially out in the Midwest. We're losing margin on every contract tied to legacy networks. I scrolled through line after line of exposure. Regional news outlets, AM radio chains, Farm Belt cable providers. And I saw it. Buried in those holdings were direct contracts with vendors I'd grown up hearing about, agricultural PR firms, co-op media buyers, even legacy lobbyists who handled messaging for equipment distributors, all tied to my family's orbit, quietly, deeply, and utterly dependent on channels we now owned. You're saying we should liquidate? I said flatly. Fast, Chris replied. There's no bounce back coming. Audiences are aging out. No one under 40's listening to harvest reports on AM radio anymore. I leaned back in my chair, eyes still on the screen. $580 million across 38 assets, all tied to infrastructure that looked solid on the outside but was hollow underneath. I didn't hesitate. Unload it. All of it. He asked. Every dollar. Reallocate into creator platforms and AI-driven prod tech. Push hard into multilingual licensing and micro-content distribution. Get the cash moving. Understood. I'll start pulling capital out now. And spin the story. Say it's about future alignment, not collapse. Already drafted the talking points. I hung up, heart steady, hand firm on the mouse as I cued the portfolio update. No doubt, no guilt. This wasn't revenge. It was strategy. We'd built our empire in silence. This was the first time we moved in daylight. Within hours, liquidation notices started firing. Contracts dissolved. Entire regional ad ecosystems cracked open. We redirected every cent into the future, platforms that knew how to scale fast, reach wide, and adapt without begging for bailouts. 72 hours later, the ripple effects hit. I got a text from a friend in B2B analytics. Something's happening in rural PR layoffs at FarmCom. Invoices on freeze. Another pinged me. Do you know why 3 AG suppliers just missed payroll? By Thursday afternoon, I checked a tracking spreadsheet Chris had built, just for curiosity's sake. 10 vendors tied to my family's co-op were now in contract limbo. Print marketing firm, quiet, software vendor, under review. Regional broadcasters, zero response. Whole pipelines jammed up. It hit fast because no one thought it could happen. These companies were propped up by reputation, not revenue. They lived on handshakes and family names. And I'd just pulled the rug. I wasn't shocked by the speed. I was shocked it took this long. For years, they'd been laughing off the digital shift like it was a Gen Z hobby, like the world was going to wait for them to catch up. Meanwhile, I was out here buying the tools that replaced them. Now, the tools were live. By Friday night, the ag forums were buzzing. Vendors ghosted, budgets frozen, rumors of consolidation, market corrections, coastal investors pulling out. I poured a glass of wine and watched it unfold. They were scrambling to figure out what went wrong. Who triggered the shakeup? Why contracts that had stood for decades were suddenly evaporating? But no one thought to ask me. Because to them, I was still dabbling. Still passing time between temp jobs and Instagram projects. Still taking notes from Riley and Aunt Pam like I didn't understand real business. But here's the truth. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I was just cleaning house. I was halfway through my second coffee when my phone lit up with Dad's name. He never called this early. I picked up. Morning. Hey, Jen, he said. His voice had that low edge I only heard when something was wrong. Got a minute? Sure, what's up? He exhaled hard. Our print marketing firm's gone dark. No calls back, no emails. The seasonal catalog's supposed to go to press this week. Now they're restructuring. I walked to the window and kept my tone neutral. That's odd. Did they give you any timeline? Nothing. Just a vague statement about reviewing contracts. And our software vendor, they're saying the same thing. All of a sudden, their legal team's involved. I scribbled both names on a sticky note, even though I already knew them. Both had been in last week's liquidation list. That's frustrating, I said. Frustrating. He gave a short, humorless laugh. It's a damn mess. Half our ad placements for next quarter are in limbo. We've got farmers waiting on updates, and the hotline's blowing up. I don't know what's going on with these media companies, but it's like the lights just went out. I pressed the sticky note flat on the desk, careful not to sound too informed. Could be consolidation or new regulations. Hard to tell from the outside. He sighed again. Feels like everything's moving too fast. Like the whole traditional setup's crumbling overnight. We used to count on these vendors for decades. I stayed quiet and let him keep talking. Even Riley's firm is feeling it, he added. They're suddenly being told to reduce costs, delay invoices. Multiple clients just lost their funding. She called me last night, worried. Really? I made my voice sound curious but not surprised. Did she say which clients? A few co-ops, one ag tech startup, a lobbying group, I think. It's all connected somehow. I can't put my finger on it. I clicked my pen once, then set it down. I can look into it if you want, see if I can find out what's happening. You do that. Of course, send me the names. I'll poke around. He was quiet for a second. You always seem so calm about this stuff. I work in media, I said. I'm used to volatility. I guess. Another pause. Sometimes I wonder if the world's just passing us by. The business model that built this family, it's not bulletproof anymore. I looked out the window at the street below, where a delivery truck idled in the rain. Nothing's bulletproof. You just adapt, or you don't. He cleared his throat. I'll email you the vendor list. Appreciate you taking a look. Sure, let me know if you need anything, I said, calm, steady. All right. His voice softened a little. Thanks, Jen. We hung up. I slid the sticky note under my laptop and opened the dashboard. The names were already there, redlined from the portfolio. The call came just after dinner. I saw Aunt Pam flash across my screen and let it ring twice before I answered. Hello. Her voice was tight, like she was trying to stay composed and failing. Jenna. Hi, sorry to call out of nowhere, but something weird's happening. I sat back in my chair. Weird how? It's in ag media and rural PR. Our vendors, longtime ones, they're collapsing. Like, not just slow, gone, vanished. Her voice cracked on that last word. I don't know what's going on. I kept my tone flat. Which ones? She rattled off a few names, every one of them I'd signed off on for liquidation. And now our ad schedule for fall, gone. We can't get anyone to place it. One of our co-ops had to cancel their harvest campaign completely. The whole quarter's a wash. I let a beat pass. There's no warning. She kept going. No explanation. Just missed emails, bounced calls, and now, one of our credit lines got pulled. Pulled, Jenna. No notice. That part caught me. From where? Regional ag lender. Said our balance sheet's too reliant on unstable media partners. And suddenly, we're being treated like a high-risk borrower. Smart lender. They'd seen what was coming. Pam was unraveling now. I swear, it's like someone flipped a switch and pulled the plug on half our ecosystem. I kept my voice calm. Do you have someone who understands digital finance, asset movement, capital flows? There was a pause. No, not really. I might know someone who could consult if needed. She didn't respond right away. I could almost hear her chewing on the idea. Pride and panic fighting for control. Then she blurted it. Would you be willing to take a look? I let silence stretch for just half a second longer than comfort allowed. Sure. You would. Her voice softened like she didn't expect me to say yes. I can't promise anything, but I can look at what you've got. I stood up and walked to the window, phone still pressed to my ear. If it's temporary, that's one thing. But if it's structural, you need to be ready for major change. There it was, the unspoken shift. For the first time, she wasn't lecturing me about real jobs or stable careers. She was asking for help. What kind of change? She asked. Operational, financial, maybe full ecosystem shift. Depends how deep the exposure goes. Another pause. I pictured her in her kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter, trying to decide if this was beneath her or necessary. Finally, she said, Can we meet? I can bring everything. Balance sheets, vendor contracts, performance reports. When? Sunday. We can meet at the co-op headquarters. I'll have a full file for you. Internal docs. Even the pending legal notices from vendors. I didn't flinch. Sunday works. My Pam let out a breath like she'd been holding it since the call started. We just need someone who understands what's happening, because I don't think this is normal anymore. I think we're in something we don't recognize. She was right about that. I'll bring my laptop, I said. Thank you, Jenna. We hung up. I stood there for a second, staring out at the night, streetlights glowing, wind pushing branches around. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked, but everything else was still. She had no idea I'd already seen the inside of their collapse before they ever knew it was happening. And now she was about to hand me the keys to the wreckage. Sunday morning, I pulled into the gravel lot behind the co-op's headquarters. The building hadn't changed since I was a kid. Red brick, green trim, rusted signage from the 70s. 2 flags hung motionless out front. The place looked like time gave up trying to update it. Pam was already inside. I walked past a case full of dusty awards and through a lobby that still smelled like copier toner and stale coffee. She waved me into the boardroom. Thanks for coming, she said quickly, like she wasn't sure whether to be embarrassed or relieved. The conference table was covered. Actual paper, balance sheets, vendor contracts, folders with colored tabs. She had brought everything. I dropped my laptop bag in a chair, took off my coat, and sat down. No small talk. Start wherever you want, I said. She pushed a stack toward me. These are the current vendor contracts. What's left of them anyway? Some have already broken terms. Some haven't responded in weeks. I flipped through them fast, scanning margins, noticing patterns. No digital redundancies, no conversion tracking, no scalable backend. Everything here relied on legacy distribution, mailers, radio slots, print ads, and community papers with circulation numbers lower than most TikTok reposts. What are your ad performance KPIs? I asked. She blinked. We usually just go by outreach reports, vendor submitted, not analytics-based. No, most of them don't offer that. I shook my head. So you've been flying blind. She didn't answer. I opened my laptop and pulled up a spreadsheet I'd already started building the night before. Here's what's happening. Every vendor you rely on was built for a pipeline that doesn't exist anymore. Their business models depended on slow cycles, passive audiences, and one-way communication. That's dead. Pam leaned in. Then what's the fix? First, we audit your remaining partners. Anyone still functional gets vetted for API capabilities, programmatic ad placement, and CRM integration. No API, no contract. Okay. Second, we shift your seasonal campaigns into hybrid influencer partnerships, local creators, ag industry voices, niche platforms, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, focused content, retargeting, and measurable reach. She looked skeptical. But our audience is aging and dying, I said flat. If you want to survive, you adapt now, or you lose market share within a year. The ad world doesn't wait for anyone, not even co-ops. She stared at the table for a second, then nodded slowly. Keep going. Third, decentralized distribution. Move off reliance on legacy channels. Launch your own newsletter, your own podcast. You control the narrative, the data, and the audience relationship. I don't even know how to start that. I do, I said, and kept going. Last, CRM overhaul. You need full integration. Sales, outreach, fulfillment. Automate anything manual. If a process needs 5 people and a fax machine, it gets replaced. Pam rubbed her temples. Jesus, we're behind. You're not behind, I said. You're underwater. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked up at me, different now. Not like I was her niece, like I was the only person in the room who could keep the building from collapsing. How did you learn all this? She asked. I closed my laptop. From 8 years of people telling me it wasn't real work. She swallowed hard. I could see it in her face. This wasn't just a business wake-up. It was personal. She realized she'd spent nearly a decade brushing me off while I was building the tools that could now save her. Pam started stacking the folders. If I give you full access, can you build the plan? Yes. Do you need to loop in anyone else? I have a team. I'll bring in what's needed. Her voice was softer now. This is going to rattle a lot of people. Better than letting the whole thing fall apart in silence. She nodded once. Okay, I'll make it happen. Just tell me what you need. I stood up, slid my laptop back into my bag, and held her eyes for a second. I'll send a proposal by tomorrow. We start this week. She didn't argue, didn't doubt. For the first time in my life, Aunt Pam just listened. Monday morning, I sent Pam the consulting proposal. Standard terms, no family discount. By noon, she called. "I got your email," she said slowly. Is this your normal rate?" "Yes." A pause. $200,000. Plus 8% equity on turnaround projects, I said. "That's the base." She was quiet on the other end. "You charge that much for this kind of work?" she asked finally. "Yes," I said, "because it works." I heard her exhale through the receiver, not angry, just stunned. I don't even know what to say. "You don't have to say anything," I told her. "Just let me know if you're moving forward. I need to understand something first." "Go ahead." She took a breath. This collapse, the media firms, the vendors, the whole disruption, was it an accident? I leaned against my kitchen counter and looked out the window. "The reason this is happening is because old infrastructure was holding you back." "But you said these were structural issues?" "They were," I said, "which is why we liquidated positions that were no longer viable. Capital moves where the return is." Pam's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "So this wasn't just a coincidence? It was capital flight and delayed correction. It was overdue." Another pause. "You knew this would affect us." "I knew what the exposure looked like. I saw the pattern. I made the call." "So you did this?" she asked, the words sharp but her voice unsteady. "I reallocated capital based on future viability," I said clearly. "Nothing personal, just business fundamentals." The line went silent, not even breathing. I waited. When she finally spoke again, her voice was different, not angry, not wounded, just real. "You always seem so quiet at family events, like you didn't care." "I cared," I said. "I just stopped explaining myself when no one listened." "I didn't know you were doing this kind of work." "No one asked." She let that land. I could tell she was sitting with it now. Not just the collapse, but everything leading up to it. The dinners, the comments, the years of dismissal. Finally, she said, "We'll move forward with the contract." "Understood. Send whatever you need from our side. I'll loop my analyst in today. We'll run a full rebuild plan by Friday." "Okay," she said. Then after a second, "Jenna." "Yeah." You didn't hesitate. "I never do when I know the numbers." She let out a small, breathy laugh. "I get that now." I ended the call, added her to the CRM, and flagged the file for Chris with a high priority tag. That was the moment it stopped being about family. Now it was just business. The next weekend, we had another family dinner, just the usual group at my parents' place. Pot roast, iced tea, and the kind of strained politeness that fills a room when everyone's pretending they haven't been shaken. Riley was mid-story about a design project in Iowa when she shifted gears. "We've had 3 clients pause contracts this week," she said, picking at her salad. "Supply chain delays, budget freezes, whatever excuse they can come up with. We're scrambling to adjust." No one said much, a few nods. Uncle Mitch cleared his throat. Even Aunt Pam didn't jump in like she usually would. That was the new tone, not warm, not hostile, just quiet. I kept my focus on my plate. No one interrupted me. No one offered advice about job stability. They were watching me differently now, like they'd missed something huge and were still trying to figure out what it was. After dessert, Dad found me on the back patio. He stepped out, hands in his pockets, face unusually serious. "Got a minute?" "Sure." He glanced through the window to make sure no one was listening, then looked at me. "How successful are you, really?" I held his eyes. "We're managing a content portfolio worth about $700 million now." He didn't react right away, just blinked, like maybe he didn't hear me right. $700 million, I said again, steady. "Licensing, acquisitions, global content rights, digital IP, all managed in-house." He just stood there, stunned, not proud, not dismissive, just trying to make the pieces fit. I didn't know." "I know." He opened his mouth to say something else, but nothing came out. Eventually, he nodded once, then turned and headed back inside. I grabbed my coat, slipped out quietly, and walked to my car. The wind had picked up. Cool, fast, I liked it. Woke me up. Once I was behind the wheel, I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Chris. "We'll move forward with the co-op consulting. Good opportunity for visibility." I hit send, then I just sat there for a second, letting the silence settle around me. No pressure, no panic, no more trying to explain myself to people who'd already decided who I was. This time, I wasn't reacting. I was leading, and they were finally starting to see it.